Hey guys, I'm Josh from First National Rayner, and I'm here with Zach. Zach, introduce
G'day.
yourself.
Yeah, g'day guys. Yeah, Zach from First National up in far north Queensland, a little suburb called Atherton.
Yeah, lovely. So Zach's here today just to chat to us about moving across from Queensland, mainly from Victoria, from our area. So we're going to ask him a couple of questions and dive into it. We'll get straight stuck into it. And what are you seeing is the biggest difficulties for people when buying property in Queensland, largely from people coming from Victoria?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're getting a lot of people moving up, and that's from Victoria, and that's been a big factor for us for the last 3 years. Our population is growing, and I think a lot of people have been wanting to make the tree change, and we've seen a lot of Victorians coming up. Um, I think one thing to take into account when considering a move is that Queensland, just geographically compared to Victoria, is quite large. And so, where you guys have a really, really big urban centre and then a lot of towns relatively close, where we live up near Cairns in far north Queensland, we're, I think, about 1,600, 1,700 kilometres from Brisbane, which is our capital city. So, when you're considering moving up here, you have a lot of variety and you have a very big area to I guess work on and whittle down where you want to be. So what we find is a lot of people are coming up, whether it's on holidays or whether they're the older demographic who are doing the grey nomad thing, and they're spending a little bit of time in Queensland trying to figure out where exactly suits their lifestyle. So that's one of the big factors. And then the other thing that I would often suggest to people who aren't familiar with Queensland is consider where the airports are. So Cairns has an international airport and a very, very busy domestic airport. Thank you to our tourism industry, Great Barrier Reef, the rainforest, all that sort of thing. Brisbane, naturally capital city, has all of that. And then there's large swathes of land between those 2 points, south and north, that they have rural airports, but the transport can be a consideration, I think, that most Victorians would want to very carefully look into before making a decision where to live.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. Well, we're the first regional town where we are, and we're only really a 60-minute drive from the airport here. So that's not really too much we have to consider. Um, so that's a good call. And I guess the next question would be differences in sale processes and legislation. Obviously, I won't get you to dive too much into the legislation, but I'm sure there's some differences. What are the main ones that trip people up?
So what we see, and I think Victoria might have one of the biggest differences compared to Queensland, is a lot of the due diligence and onus is on the buyers. So when a property goes on market, buyers are generally going to be making an offer, but that offer will include terms for your building and pests, your due diligence, and your finance. And then after that has been signed and accepted, the buyers then go out and find their own building inspector, pay for those inspections and the searches, if their solicitors are doing that, and do the due diligence themselves. Whereas, and correct me if I'm wrong, I understand in Victoria quite a lot of those searches and inspections are actually provided as part of an information pack at the start of a sale to prospective buyers.
Yeah,
So
not
it's a bit of a shift.
it can be common. It's not too common in our area. I know a lot of information is provided in the Section 32. A building and pest inspection isn't typically one of them in our area, but it can be towards the city a little bit more, something that they do at the start, and then provide that to prospective purchasers throughout. But typically in our area, building inspections aren't. But we do provide a lot of detail in the Section 32s through our conveyances.
Yeah.
Is that something you typically don't do as much?
That's one to mention is occasionally we do get the emails from people down there and
Yeah.
they'll say, can I have the section 32? And we don't have that. So something to consider if your Queensland agent comes back and says, sorry, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Don't be surprised. They're not hiding anything. It's just a difference in legislation on that side of things.
Yeah. Yeah, lovely. And I guess the hardest thing that I get told a lot is trying to navigate buying from here, obviously it's not easy to just catch a plane up and take a look through a property. You can't just meet you there on a random Wednesday night for an inspection. So people have largely got to navigate two property markets that are very different in nature, Queensland and Victoria. I guess what would be your tips in navigating those, and how have you seen people have the best success with that?
Yeah, it's a good question. It depends on the people and how much help they need. But I think having a connected agent and a connected agency like First National is really helpful, because what we find is we'll be working with our colleagues like yourself down south, assisting owners. Sometimes it's little things. It's sending information packets that maybe an office in Victoria can print for people who would prefer that, or sending contracts and paperwork that needs to be signed, as far all the way through to someone like yourself, Josh, connecting one of your clients with someone like me, if someone's looking on the tablelands, or one of maybe David Forrest's team if they want to come to Cairns. So much like Victoria, we've got offices across the entire state. If you're looking anywhere in Queensland, you're probably going to find a First National office, and your Victorian agents can connect their clients with the right people to talk to. And then from there, it's just a matter of what their needs are. If they need video calls, recorded videos, live walkthroughs, whatever, we can all arrange it amongst ourselves.
Yeah, it definitely makes it easier having a connection, especially through First National. Obviously, we can be quite close between offices and work quite close together to make it a bit smoother.
Absolutely.
And I guess the next one comes down to, and you touched a little bit on it, researching Queensland and where to go, what to do. You mentioned the airports. Is there anything else that you'd take into account?
Well, yeah, touched on it a little bit there. Number one, if you can do it, come for a holiday. That's the best way. Fly into Cairns. You'll get to see the Great Barrier Reef, the rainforest, the Daintree, which is I think the world's oldest rainforest. Maybe not the biggest, but the oldest. You can come up and see us on the tablelands. If you can't do that, and like I mentioned, Queensland is a big place, then we have a lot of conversations with people that like to ask us about the areas, about the amenities, what's available here, and we have a lot of people interested in that sort of information. We've had a number of sales where people have relied upon us being able to explain the regions and what to expect, the feel, the vibe, the amenities, for them to make decisions to move up and buy sight unseen. For a lot of these people, we'll then arrange those video calls and those video tours as well. And so, yeah, if you can get up, fantastic. If you can't, then we can help you with those sort of methods as well.
Yeah, right. And you're from Atherton, so tell us a little bit about that and maybe why people typically move there. And if you've had, as you said, a lot of people moving from Victoria, why do they typically come to Atherton?
Yeah. Look, I'm a little bit biased, and I always start the conversation by saying that Atherton Tablelands is a really interesting place. I think most people down south who haven't visited the tropics probably presume when they hear that word that it's going to be really hot and sweaty and nasty weather in the summer and that sort of thing. What's great about the Tablelands specifically is we don't have that. We're at about 700 meters elevation. So we sit up on the table, up above the mountains. We've got the Great Dividing Range basically surrounding us. So we're very protected from cyclones and nasty weather. So all these horror stories you see on sunrise when there's a cyclone, it's never really affected us. The temperature's fantastic. The winters are relatively warm. The summers are relatively cool. We don't have a lot of that coastal humidity. And in the areas themselves, we're primarily on the tablelands, agriculture. And that ranges from crops right through to dairy farming. And particularly the dairy farming part of the tablelands, very pretty. If you imagine some of those really picturesque scenes that you see from New Zealand, well, it kind of looks like that here. We get a lot of Kiwis moving over for that, but we're not freezing cold. So there's a lot of variety here. It's a big area with a relatively low population. lots of little towns that all have their own vibe. So Herberton's a historic mining village. Yungaburra is a really sort of chic village that people like to visit for the markets and the old buildings and all that sort of stuff. And then in between all of that, you've got Atherton, which is your main hub with hospitals and supermarkets and all these sorts of things. Cairns is only about an hour's drive away. And right there, we have the Great Barrier Reef, we have the international airport and everything else you could probably ever want. So if you're looking for a bit of a tree change, a really pretty surrounding, and probably some of the best weather in the world, then this is probably where you want to be.
Well, you're selling me on it, especially the weather part compared to down here in Victoria. It's freezing.
Yeah, well, we might have to get you up at the end of the year to show you what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think I'll be there. Well, that's pretty much it. I mean, if anyone has any other questions, I'm sure you'd be happy to take their calls and answer them as well.
Yeah.
But that pretty much concludes it. So we'll give it a wrap. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it and answering those questions.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you. We hope to see some of them soon.
All right. Catch you later, guys.
See ya.